Corey, hello. We're sitting here in Tel Aviv near the beach. How long have you been living in Israel?
So I've been living in Israel off and on since 1989 for about a total of 20 years. Yeah.
And originally from?
From Ottawa, Canada.
Okay, and why do you still live here?
I really love living here. I think it's incredibly interesting. I'd be bored to death if I had to go back to Canada, which I might have to do to have an okay pension. I have this love-hate relationship with this country, that there's so many amazing things, and at the same time things can be very, very frustrating here. And I don't mean what, if anyone's watching this, they probably think I mean something to do with the conflict. Actually, I don't love the conflict, but it's an incredibly interesting conflict, an incredibly safe conflict, a little bit tragic, but a very interesting place where you can wander around and just talk to people. The frustrating things here are just the way people are. They're very different than they are in Canada. It's very chaotic. It's very spontaneous. It could be a good thing. It could also be very frustrating. People can be difficult. They have a lot of shtick, where they have a lot of issues around pride and not being taken advantage of. So it comes out in day-to-day things, whether you're getting a bottle of water at the store, or you need to renew your passport, or have a conversation in a cab. It can happen anywhere. So.
What are the things that you love? Can you tell us a few examples?
Well, compared to Canada, the weather is part of it, but that's a kind of shallow, silly reason. And the sunsets here are amazing. I love the creativity of the people here, how interesting they are, how they how creative they are in different ways. The way that music is here, the food, they will mix different aspects of their cultures and other cultures, and to create something which is really unique. And it's done very honestly. It's not, through, being pretentious. It's not something there is that aspect too, that anything that's American is the most wonderful thing in the world and it must be great. But a lot of it comes from, using their grandparents' recipes in something. Their grandparents came from Tunisia or Russia or Yemen, and using something in that to create something really new and Israeli and interesting. I like the warmth of people. It's a common thing for people to sit down and you start talking, if you're sitting next to each other somewhere, and within 2 minutes, people would assume that you've known each other forever, just because of the way people are here. It's a very open and sort of flat culture in terms of getting to know people. People will just talk and say whatever they think and whatever they want. You walk out of your house and it's always interesting. You meet the most incredible people to a certain extent, in the sense that they're really interesting. They have interesting lives. They don't think they're interesting at all, but for somebody who comes from somewhere else, they tell me their stories, and I find that fascinating. Yeah.
After living here for so long, what are some of the misconceptions about Israel that you find people having, that you find particularly wrong and irritating, that you would like to clear?
Well, there's a lot of them, but I'm not sure what people think necessarily. Okay, so my impression before ever coming here was, because I'm Jewish, it would be that this would be like going to New York and seeing Hasidic Jews, everyone being religious and being something like that, and it's not that at all. I mean, you can find those areas, they exist, but the dominant culture is nothing like that. It's very secular, with elements of the traditions of Judaism. I think the one I always go to, which I don't know how many people have this, but I hear this a lot in the Arab world, the Muslim world, is people think this is a very European place. It's not European, it's very Middle Eastern. The majority of people in Israel, their grandparents came from a Middle Eastern country, and the culture reflects that. It's a Western culture in mentality, but a lot of the cultural attributes of food, mentality, of how they deal with each other, of how they speak to each other, slang, it's all from different Middle Eastern cultures that they came with and adapted to create this unique Israeli culture. So I think that people assume that this is going to be a little Europe, and there are elements. There are, some very European elements here. Definitely, if you come from Jordan, it's going to, you might think that this is much more European. Palestinians tell me that all the time. But if somebody comes from Canada, this is much more Middle Eastern than I would have expected. So, but, it's reflected in who the people are. The people are Middle Eastern.
What motivates your work interviewing people kind of on both sides of the spectrum? What drives that?
It's fun. It's just fun to ask people questions. It's fun to know why. Actually, no, the thing, I'll give you the story that I think I told this before, so it's not new, but I remember during the Oslo years, I lived here, so the 90s, up until 2000, thinking, okay, we're going to have peace with the Palestinians. And then buses were blowing up in Tel Aviv or in Jerusalem and all around Israel and Sham. And none of us could understand why there were buses blowing up. Nobody could figure that out. It didn't make any sense. So other than, obviously, to us, it meant the Palestinians don't want peace. And when the whole thing broke down in the Second Intifada, when the dominant PA group went against the Israelis just said, you know what, it's true, I guess the Arabs can't make peace with the Jews, it's just impossible. That was the dominant idea, and so most people who believed in the peace process, and that was, majority of people, felt betrayed, felt that they got something wrong. And I wanted to look at that from an analytical perspective of trying to figure out, okay, so how do we analyze? What went wrong? What happened? Why didn't it work? Why were we so caught so off guard about? So part of the reason for doing the videos is to explain the Israeli side and to explain the Palestinian side, in the sense that if anyone wants to create some kind of an agreement, they can understand all the elements that would go into the agreement based on what the people think. So I would hope that next time they create an agreement, I'd be able to read it and go, I see where there's some issues here that Palestinians are going to have an issue with, or Israelis are going to have an issue with, and this is where it's going to fall apart. So really it's a little bit of selfishness, because I don't want to be caught off guard again. I didn't like that feeling. I think that's what most people thought. I don't know if they care anymore, but I care, because I hope there is another agreement. And then the secondary part is what I said is a lot of fun to do. You learn people's stories, you learn what's truth and what's not. There's the media tends to get almost everything wrong. I've never read a media story about Israelis or Palestinians where I went, yeah, that's it. There was always some element, including stories that I was the focus of the story. A couple of newspapers did stories on me. And even they got things where they outright lied, and I had to call them on it, and they had to take it out of the article because they wanted to make it spicier. They wanted to make it look like, in this case it was an Israeli soldier, and making it look like he was threatening a Palestinian when he actually wasn't threatening a Palestinian. That's a whole other story. I want people to hear through the words of the people what they think is truth.
Give us one reason or a couple of reasons why you think everyone should come and visit here.
Well, everyone, okay, first of all, if you're anti-Israel and you think Zionism is the worst thing to ever be created, come see what it is. Come find out who's a Zionist, who isn't a Zionist, because I can guarantee that 90% of whatever you think is wrong.
One reason that this is wrong is because you can watch all the CNN, all the Fox News, every channel on TV all day, and you're never going to get the real idea of what it's like to live here. Would you agree with that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, even when they were, let's take the Gaza protests that were going on, this is in 2018, so around May 15th to mark the anniversary of the 70th year of the Nakba, of the destruction of Palestinian people. There were protests in Gaza, and the way that it was being reported in all media was not the way it was being reported to Gazans, not the way it was being reported to Israelis. So if the two people who were involved, the Gazans and the Israelis, and each of those had totally different ways of analyzing what was going on. But if the foreign media was looking at it from this other perspective, which actually had no relevance, or very little relevance, I can't say it had none, because there's always some truth in what they say, but it's just a grain of truth, and the rest of it is nonsense. If the foreign media is getting it all wrong, then people's opinions about it are completely off. So I'd say just come here. And if you're pro-Palestinian, don't just go to Ramallah and hang out with them. Do 2 weeks in Ramallah or 2 weeks in well, I'd say don't go to Jerusalem, because Jerusalem people tend to be a bit of lunatics, but anywhere on the coast. Haifa, Tel Aviv, Ashkelon, Ashdod, anywhere. It's fine. Thank you. And if you're pro-Israel, then go spend 2 weeks in the West Bank with Palestinians. Meet everybody. And the other thing is, people love to sell you a story. And that includes me. I have my ideas. I try not to put them into the videos. I have my ideas of what's going on and what this is all about. I could be wrong. I could be completely wrong. Anytime somebody tells you something, ask questions. Ask questions. So if somebody says, do you believe in peace? Ask them, what does peace mean? What is peace to you? What are you going to do with peace? Are the Jews included in the peace? Are Palestinians included in peace? Because the food's not that important.
I don't think you mean that.
No, the food's very important. I'm just kidding. Shall mine. So ask questions, because people use it's a common mistake. I say I want peace. What peace means to me might be completely different than what it means to you.
In conclusion, is it a safe place to visit?
Oh yeah, totally safe.
Christians, for Muslims,
everyone,
for Muslim
everyone. This is nonsense. People think they can't come here. I know people from Lebanon. I know people who came here from Lebanon. They didn't have Lebanese passports, but obviously at the border they know that they're Lebanese. It's not an issue. It's not such a big issue. You will, I have to warn you, you will be questioned a lot, and sometimes for hours. A friend of mine was questioned for 10 hours at the border, which I felt really bad about. But she was allowed in. Most people are allowed in, hopefully. Sometimes they're a little overly cautious. Once you're in the country, it's the opposite. I walk around with people here who I know from Gaza or from Lebanon or who have I been with here? Saudi Arabia, and saying, this guy is from Gaza, and people are like, wow, that's amazing. That's really incredible on both sides. So just come.
Thank you, Corey.
Thank you. Thanks guys for watching. Remember to like the video and subscribe. Guys, I pay for these videos out of my own pocket with some help from you guys, so people who donate money. Please go into the description below, donate what you can. It'll help me get further and create more videos. Thanks.